well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you on the program today. Hope you had a fantastic Mother's Day weekend. Had a chance to say hi to Mom, or if, like me, your mom is no longer with us, hopefully you had a chance to at least, think about some good times. I ended up taking my lovely bride and mother of 5 out to the drive-in movies this weekend. Yes, we went to the Goochland Independent Drive-In Theater in Goochland County, Virginia, one of my favorite named places in the United States. I got to tell you, I don't know if drive-ins, we had a great time. It's not the same as going to see a movie in the movie theater, but it was better than nothing. We were able to socially distance. My wife is going through treatment for lung cancer, so her immune system is kind of shot, but we were able to stay in our car and get out of the house for at least a couple hours. Anyway, hopefully you had a good weekend as well. One of the things we're going to focus on today, we do have an armed citizen story for you. We've got our good deed of the day. We've got a recidivist report. I do want to let you know, too, some breaking news. Governor Ralph Northam in Virginia has a new Executive Order 61, in which indoor gun ranges no longer declared places of indoor amusement. Yeah, this is interesting. And they will be allowed to reopen following social distancing measures this Friday, May 15th. This comes after a Lynchburg judge told Governor Ralph Northam, hey, guess what? I think you're overstepping your constitutional bounds by ordering indoor ranges closed. He actually granted an injunction against Northam's order, but only to one gun store, or one gun range, rather, a Safe Side Tactical in Lynchburg, Virginia. They were allowed to reopen last week, and now this week, ranges across the state will reopen as well. Looks like Governor Northam's not going to appeal that Lynchburg, Virginia judge's decision. I suspect because he doesn't want a wider loss given the unconstitutionality of his orders. So he will likely avoid further court challenges by acquiescing to the plain and obvious fact that if you have the right to keep, you've got the right to bear, you've got the right to acquire, and you've got the right to train as well. Governor Northam did not try to shut down gun stores, I believe in part because of a Virginia state law that he actually approved as a state senator back in 2012, limiting the actions of governors it doesn't just limit, it prevents the governor from acting to infringe on our Second Amendment rights during a state of emergency. Again, the Lynchburg judge that ruled Northam's order was out of bounds noted that we do have the protections of the Second Amendment. We have the Virginia State Constitution, and we have that law limiting the governor's ability to act. So that's some good news out of Virginia. But, with the just staggering number of new gun owners that we have across this country, and in light of some recent stories that I've seen around the country, including the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia, I wanted to talk a little bit about self-defense and what is self-defense and what is not self-defense. Obviously, a lot of attention is being paid to the Arbery case now, but there are a couple of other stories that have popped up over the past few weeks where individuals may have believed that they were acting in self-defense, or they believed that they were acting lawfully when they were actually far outside of the boundaries of the law. So let's take a look at some of these cases here. The first one from back in late April in South Florida. This is the headline from the Miami Herald. He broke into a car and stole a gun, and then the owner ran him off the road, according to police. Now, the homeowner in question here is facing charges. Even though he had been burglarized the night before, somebody broke into his car, stole several items, including the vehicle's keys and a handgun in that car. Miami Herald says after the break-in on Friday night, the suspect apparently returned to the home at about 5 a.m. the next day. Police say the homeowner, Ellis George, came outside after seeing the burglar trying to break into his car again through the doorbell camera. The burglary suspect, 35-year-old Michael Rulo, then hopped on a scooter and drove off. Police say that Georges chased after him in his car. Okay. First of all, if you're going to do something like that, keep in mind, self-defense only is legal when you believe that your life is in imminent danger or you are in imminent danger of great bodily harm. So what Mr. Georges should have done is called police, reported, hey, the guy that broke into my car last night, I think it's the same guy that I just saw break into my car this morning. Here's his description. He took off in a scooter. Here's what he was wearing. Maybe he could have gotten the license plate. If you really wanted to try to get police to respond, you could say, I am following this guy at a safe distance. I'm a block behind him or a half a block behind him. I'm not letting him take off. I'm keeping track of him. Here's our current location. What you don't have the right to do is to try to engage that individual after they've taken off. No matter how mad or angry you might be, no matter how much you think this person's going to get away with it, you don't have the right to do what Mr. Georges is alleged of doing. Miami Herald says the pursuit ended less than a mile from where it began. On a dead-end street, concrete barriers bordered the back of a Walgreens drugstore. Police say the 45-year-old Georges plowed his car into Rouleau's scooter, causing him to slam into the barriers. He died on the ground between two of the barriers. Georges' wife had called police to report the burglary. Officers arrived, and as they were speaking to her, Georges came home with, quote, severe damage to the front of his car. Police asked him what happened, told him he had damaged the car chasing after Rouleau. Defendant also stated he believed that he had struck a barrier. Police have now arrested Georges and arrested him on a charge of second-degree murder with a weapon. He is being held on no bond. Then you have a case more recently out of North Carolina. This happened about a week ago. Here's the headline from Port City Daily, the local paper. Vigilante group, including New Hanover deputy, allegedly threatens a Laney High senior. So this high school student, Damian Shepard, was at home. This was last Sunday night. He's playing video games when he hears a knock on his door. Goes to answer the door and finds a police officer there, as well as two individuals, one with a shotgun, one with a rifle, and about 15 other people just crowded behind the three. And they're looking for a high school student who was linked to a 15-year-old girl who had been reported missing about the same time that the group arrived at this home on Sunday evening. According to Damian Shepard, his mom, and various neighbors, two Pender County deputies later arrived at the scene, followed by a captain. They conducted short interviews. No arrests were made Sunday night. However, the off-duty sheriff's deputy who arrived at that home, along with the two other armed individuals and the crowd of about 15 other folks, that deputy has now been fired and is facing criminal charges for what authorities call a, quote, armed vigilante group. The Pender County Sheriff, Alan Cutler, asked last Friday if deputies had found enough evidence to make an arrest. He said there may have been enough evidence collected that night to make an arrest, but we didn't want to rush any hasty decisions. He said the situation was diffused. We didn't feel like there was any threat that evening, so we took a little more time to make sure that we made an informed decision. Okay, well, now the decision apparently has been informed, and the criminal charges have been filed. Forcible trespass, breaking and entering, and a willful failure to discharge his duties as an officer of the law. Yeah. Again, even if you suspect that somebody might be involved in a crime, you can't simply show up at that individual's house at gunpoint and demand to be let inside, to look around, to see if, in this case, a missing girl was present. That's just not going to be considered kosher. That is a crime. And then we have the case of Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia. The latest in this case, the Georgia Attorney General calling for a federal investigation into the handling of the Arbery case based on two district attorneys and their actions. So Jackie Johnson, who's the Glenn County DA, the office that would have originally handled this case, you've got a couple of police officers that apparently are alleging that they wanted to make an arrest in the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery back on February 23rd, but were told not to by the district attorney's office. Then you've got a second district attorney who investigated this case and ultimately recused himself. But before he did, wrote a document basically saying, I don't think that the McMichaels should be charged here. They were in hot pursuit of someone they believed to be a criminal suspect. There was a struggle for the gun, and that's when Gregory McMichael's fired in self-defense. When the Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over the handling of this case, it took them about less than 48 hours to determine that there actually was probable cause to make an arrest. And both Gregory McMichaels and his son Travis McMichaels are now facing not just murder charges, but aggravated assault charges as well. There have been a lot of armchair attorneys weighing in on this case, and I have to note, I'm one of them. I am not a practicing attorney. I am not a lawyer, but I am somebody who has covered self-defense stories as a Second Amendment journalist for 15, almost 16 years. Well, no, actually over 16 years now. And I can tell you that there are some real problems with this case. First of all, you go back and you look to, and before we actually get into the case itself, let's talk a little bit about what charges the McMichaels are not facing here. They're not facing any weapons charges. They're not facing charges of carrying without a license. They're not facing charges of even brandishing a firearm. They're facing aggravated assault and murder charges. So a lot of the armchair attorneys have been looking at this case and looking at the videos that have been released and said, there was reason for the McMichaels to go and to try to stop this individual, to try to, and there simply was no legal justification for doing so. Even if the McMichaels believed that Ahmaud Arbery was responsible for entering a home that was under construction in their neighborhood, as a surveillance video has shown, even if they believe that Arbery was stealing things from that property, there is no evidence to suggest that that happened on February 23rd, that Sunday afternoon when Arbery was shot and killed. And Georgia's citizen's arrest law is pretty clear as to when somebody can make a citizen's arrest. You have to witness an individual in the act of committing a crime and then stop them. Or if they are, if you believe that they've committed a felony and they're attempting to flee, you can stop them as well. But you have to, again, have immediate knowledge of this crime that's been committed. It can't be, well, I think that this is the guy who broke into my house a couple of days ago. I'm going to hold him at gunpoint until police arrive. I'm going to tackle him. I'm going to sit on him until authorities get here because I think he broke into my car a week ago. That's not going to be a valid citizen's arrest. At that point, you are the aggressor. And this is what a lot of folks I don't think are understanding here. It's not a matter of, well, Arbery was the aggressor because he went after Travis McMichaels, who was holding a shotgun. No. From the moment the McMichaels decided to pursue Ahmaud Arbery, they were the aggressors in this situation. I had somebody tell me on Twitter today that, well, listen, you don't have the right to make a citizen's arrest in this case, but when Arbery went for Travis McMichael's shotgun, all of a sudden now his dad was able to shoot Arbery in defense of his son's life. That's not how it works either. Think of it this way. Guy walks into a convenience store. He's got a gun. He points the gun in the clerk's face and says, "Give me your money." The clerk goes for the gun, tries to wrestle the gun away from the robber. The robber shoots the clerk. Does the robber get to claim self-defense? No, the robber does not. The robber was not acting in self-defense. The robber was acting as the initial aggressor in this case, which is why the aggravated assault charges that McMichaels are facing are also just as important, quite frankly, to the prosecution's case as the murder charge. The allegation is that the McMichaels assaulted Arbery by refusing, by again, trying to pin him in to block his progress and then pointing a gun at Arbery, who at that point, again, was not under any legal suspicion for committing any crime whatsoever, had not been witnessed by the Arbery's in the commission of a crime. This was not a valid citizen's arrest. And it is, again, against the law to simply, pursue somebody to try to stop them at gunpoint, even if you say, well, I tried to stop him at gunpoint just so I could talk to him. Even if you say, well, the reason why I had the gun is because I was afraid he might have had a gun, so that's why I had the gun when I tried to prevent him from leaving, and that's why I pointed the gun at him. That's not self-defense. It just isn't. Again, self-defense does not happen when you are the initial aggressor. So The case against the McMichaels, I have to say, is pretty strong. Now, prosecutors might have a difficult time proving murder as opposed to manslaughter, but I don't think that they're going to have a difficult time proving that the McMichaels were not acting in self-defense. I don't think that they're going to have a difficult time proving that the McMichaels were not conducting a valid citizen's arrest under Georgia law. And that, again, from the moment they tried to prevent Ahmaud Arbery from running down the street, that they were the aggressors in this situation. Now, again, there's so much surrounding this particular story. It's now getting into the character of the suspect, the character of the victims. Were they racist? Were they not? Arbery had a past criminal charge when he was 19 for bringing a gun to a basketball game. He had a shoplifting charge in 2018. Again, he's caught on surveillance video several nights previously walking through this unfinished home. None of that matters. And the case that's being investigated by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the case that will go to a grand jury when grand juries reconvene, right now it's slated to be June 12th in the state of Georgia, although I would not be surprised if we actually saw a push to impanel a grand jury to look at the Arbery case before then. The facts of this case, you don't have to get to some sort of conclusion about the character of the McMichaels, whether or not they were racist. There's going to be all kinds of noise surrounding this incident. But if you just look at the facts, and if you consider the facts in this case do not justify a self-defense claim. Not when you were the initial aggressor. In fact, if anybody had a right to act in self-defense, it would have been Ahmaud Arbery, who again was stopped at gunpoint by two guys as he was jogging down the street. So again, this is one of these situations. In fact, all of these situations, I think, are really important to look at as gun owners, and we have a lot of new gun owners who may have purchased a firearm to act in self-defense. It is critically important that you not only know how to be safe and responsible with your firearm, but it's also critically important that you know what the law is, when you have a right to act in self-defense, and when the law is going to see you as the aggressor, right? So there you go. We'll continue to take a look at all of these cases, bring any more details as they become available. We do have a legitimate story of armed self-defense to get to. We'll get to that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at our recidivist report from the state of Hawaii, where several of the inmates released early because of the coronavirus pandemic are now back behind bars after committing more crimes while they were released. This is becoming a fairly common story around the country. The Honolulu Star-Advertiser reports that one of these individuals, pretrial detainee Amos Filippo, who was awaiting trial on a felony auto theft charge. March 27th, he was granted supervised release, rescheduled his trial. While he was out, prosecutors charged Filippo with petty misdemeanor theft for allegedly stealing items from a convenience store 3 days after his release, and then misdemeanor terroristic threats for allegedly threatening a woman with bodily harm April 29th at a residential building. At least a dozen inmates released from correctional facilities over coronavirus concerns have been rearrested for various reasons that range from violating a stay-at-home order to being accused of committing new crimes. Filippo, by the way, already has 18 convictions to his name. So when we're told, by the way, that, well, these are only low-level offenders, these are people who, just maybe just have a minor brush with the law on their records. No, 18 convictions. 2 felony burglaries, 3 felony drug convictions, misdemeanors for assault, abuse of a family or household member, as well as petty misdemeanors for criminal property damage, DUI, and disorderly conduct. Another case, according to the Honolulu Star-Advertiser, 27-year-old Vanity Sua had been in jail since March for allegedly violating the terms of her probation. She was released early and rearrested and charged with an armed carjacking April 22nd in Waipahu, Hawaii. According to an affidavit filed at U.S. District Court in Honolulu, Sua entered the victim's car before 2 men drove up in a pickup truck. They then left their vehicle brandishing handguns. Sua snatched the car keys from the ignition. Victims were ordered out of their car. Sua allegedly drove off in the vehicle while one of her accomplices left in the truck. Actually, she took off in her car. One of the accomplices took off in the stolen car, and then another one left in the pickup truck. The two male carjackers remain at large. Now, Sua, who again had been released early, being held without bail in federal custody while she awaits these federal charges. Today's armed citizen story from Charles County, Maryland. And this is kind of a bizarre story. So last week, police shot and killed a doctor in Charles County, Maryland, who had started firing on homes in his neighborhood with a rifle. And only now are we learning that that suspect actually was wounded by a neighbor in a shootout. This was in La Plata, Maryland. Diane Richardson, spokeswoman for the Charles County Sheriff's Office, says Dr. Daquan Tron walked onto the front lawn of a home there in La Plata back on April 26, began shooting at the house with a rifle. The homeowner inside returned fire with a handgun, actually wounding the doctor. The exchange of gunfire, according to Fox 5 in D.C., lasted for several minutes before deputies arrived. Deputies showed up within 5 minutes of the first 911 call, which came from a person reporting a home invasion. The deputies seen Dr. Tran with the rifle, then opened fire and killed the doctor. Sheriff's spokeswoman says that several children and an adult male were inside the home when Dr. Tran opened fire. One person suffered a graze wound, apparently from flying shrapnel. They still don't know why Dr. Tran began opening fire in his neighborhood. Nobody had reported any animosity between the doctor and neighbors or things of that nature. As for why the information about the armed citizen wasn't immediately released, the sheriff's spokeswoman said, quote, "We wanted to make sure that the evidence matched the information that was being reported to us. The man was defending himself and his family. We had multiple crime scenes, a lot of evidence, and it simply took a lot of time to analyze it." Okay. Still not exactly sure why there wasn't at least mention of that fact back on the day of this officer-involved shooting, but I am awfully glad to know that that family and that homeowner in La Plata, Maryland, able to protect themselves from a rampaging neighbor until authorities could arrive. Finally, today's good deed of the day from Decatur, Arkansas, where a welfare check led to an officer actually helping a family in need. This comes from the Northwest Arkansas online website, the Democrat Gazette. Decatur police officer who does not want to be identified got a call, welfare check for a family in the eastern part of the town. He showed up at the house, spoke with the family, 3 adults, 4 children under the age of 5, and he found that they had very little food and toiletries inside the residence. So he went to the local Dollar General, out of pocket, purchased enough supplies to sustain the family for a few days. In the meantime, the department had gotten the word out about the family to a local church, New Word Church in Decatur wanted to help out as well. They came up with enough food items to fill the back of Decatur Police Chief Steve Grizzle's cruiser. Grizzle said, quote, "The family did not ask for help, but our department officers felt that they should do what they could." So in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. The officers there at the Decatur, Arkansas Police Department, as well as the folks at the New Word Church there in Decatur, Illinois, or Decatur, Arkansas, rather. Excuse me. We thank you for your very, very good deeds. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as well. We'll be back tomorrow. Again, I had mentioned on Friday's program, we're going to try to talk with Mike Lynn, one of the armed protesters up in Michigan who actually escorted a state legislator into her office. Had some scheduling concerns, could not get that done today. Hopefully, we'll talk with Mike tomorrow. In the meantime, the Michigan Capitol Commission actually voting today whether or not to ban firearms from the Michigan State Capitol. We'll have more on that story on the next edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. Until we talk again, be safe, be well, be free, and we'll see you soon with more Bearing Arms Cam & Company.